The wrench slipped from my greasy fingers at exactly 10:47 p.m., clattering against the concrete floor of my garage like a gunshot in the silence. That's when I heard my wife Melissa's voice drifting down from our bedroom window above, hushed but clear as crystal in the cool October air. "No, Travis, he's completely clueless. I told him I meant my evening spin class. I'll see you in 20 minutes. I lay there under my beat-up Ford pickup, staring at the oil-stained undercarriage, feeling something cold and sharp twist in my gut. Spin class, right. The only thing spinning was apparently my entire marriage, and I was the last fool to know it. My name is Danny Mitchell, and I've been fixing cars in this Rust Belt town of Millfield for the better part of 15 years. I know the sound of a blown gasket, can diagnose a transmission problem from 50 feet away, and can spot a lemon on a used car lot faster than most people can tie their shoes. But apparently, I couldn't spot my own wife cheating on me right under my nose. I slid out from under the truck, wiping my hands on an already filthy rag. Through the thin walls of our two-story house, I could hear Melissa moving around upstairs, probably getting ready for her workout. The irony wasn't lost on me that she'd been getting plenty of exercise lately, just not the kind that required a gym membership. Travis. The name hit me like a sucker punch. Travis Kellerman, the smooth-talking owner of Kellerman's premium auto sales on the other side of town. I'd met him exactly twice at community events, and both times he'd struck me as the kind of guy who wore expensive cologne to cover up the stench of his personality. Apparently, my wife had a different opinion. I walked to the small window that faced our driveway and watched as Melissa emerged from the house, gym bag slung over her shoulder, looking like she was heading to an actual fitness class. She'd always been beautiful, even after 16 years of marriage and raising our daughter Sam. Auburn hair, green eyes that used to light up when she saw me coming home from work. Now those same eyes barely acknowledged my existence. She climbed into her silver Honda Civic, the one I'd spent 3 weekends last month tuning up for her, making sure it ran perfectly. The engine purred to life with the smooth precision of my handiwork. She backed out of the driveway without so much as a glance to refrigerator, Sam's honor roll certificates, vacation snapshots from happier times. When had it all started falling apart? Our daughter Sam was at her friend's house for the night, which explained why Melissa felt comfortable enough to make her phone calls from the bedroom. At 16, Sam was sharp as a tack, probably would have picked up on her mother's deception faster than I had. The thought of having to explain this mess to her made my stomach churn. I pulled out my laptop and did something I never thought I'd do. I Googled, "signs your wife is cheating." The list that popped up read like a checklist of my marriage over the past 6 months. Distant behavior. Check. Suddenly concerned about appearance. Check. Protective of phone. Double check. New hobbies and interests. Triple check with a cherry on top. The spin class story had started 3 months ago. Melissa had announced she was joining Fit Life Gym, the fancy place across town with the juice bar and the personal trainers who looked like they belonged in fitness magazines. She'd been going 3 nights a week, sometimes 4, always coming home energized and glowing. I'd been proud of her for taking care of herself, even encouraged it. What a fool. I finished my beer and started pacing around the living room, my mind racing. How long had this been going on? Was Travis the first, or just the latest? How many people in our small town knew about this before I did? The questions multiplied like a virus, each one more painful than the last. By midnight, Melissa still wasn't home. Her spin class was apparently an endurance event. I tried calling her phone, but it went straight to voicemail. "Hi, you've reached Melissa. Leave a message and I'll get back to you." So cheerful, so innocent. I left no message. Instead, I went back out to the garage and did what I always did when life got complicated. I worked on engines. There's something therapeutic about the logic of mechanical problems. Every issue has a cause, every cause has a solution, and every solution requires the right tools and enough determination to see it through. Unlike marriages, apparently. Melissa finally came home at 12:43 a.m. slipping quietly through the front door like a teen phone call. I might have believed everything was normal. "How was your spin class?" I asked, watching her face carefully. "Oh, exhausting, but good. Jenny really pushes us hard." She didn't miss a beat, didn't even blink. The lie rolled off her tongue like she'd been practicing it. Jenny was supposedly her instructor, a fictional character in the elaborate story my wife had constructed. I'd learned a lot about Jenny over the past 3 months, none of it true. After Melissa left for her job at Morrison Insurance, I did something I'd never done in 16 years of marriage. I searched through her things. It felt like a violation, but then again, so was adultery. In her nightstand drawer, beneath a stack of romance novels, I found a receipt from the Riverside Inn, a motel 20 minutes outside of town. The date was from last week, room 237, paid in cash. The receipt was tucked inside one of her books, like a bookmark, which struck me as either incredibly careless or incredibly cruel. Her laptop was password protected, but I knew Melissa well enough to guess. Sam 2007, our daughter's name and birth year. Amateur hour. Her browser history told a story of deleted conversations and private browsing sessions, but her email was still logged in. That's where I found them. Not love letters exactly, but something worse. Casual intimacy. Messages about meeting times, inside jokes, complaints about me. Danny's working late again, thank God, more time for us. And my personal favorite, he's so clueless, I could probably bring you home for dinner and he wouldn't notice. Clueless. That word hit harder than it should have. Maybe I was clueless, but I was learning fast. I took screenshots of everything, saved them to a flash drive, and cleared the browser history, just like she'd been doing. If she wanted to play games, I could learn the rules. That afternoon, I drove past Kellerman's premium auto sales on my way to pick up parts. Travis was in the lot, talking to a customer next to a shiny red Corvette. He was exactly what I'd remembered. Tall, gym-built, with a kind of artificial tan that screamed vanity. He wore a suit that probably cost more than I made in a month, and his smile was as, "Be frank." "Sounds good. Love you." There were those words again, meaningless as counterfeit money. I drove to Frank's gym, a converted warehouse that smelled like sweat and determination. Frank was in his 50s, built like a brick wall, with hands that could crush beer cans and a heart soft enough to help any kid who wandered through his doors looking for direction. "Danny boy!" Frank's voice boomed across the gym. "What brings you to my palace of pain?" "Need to talk, Frank, and maybe hit something." Frank took one look at my face and nodded toward his office. "Grab 2 beers from the cooler. This sounds like a sitting conversation." I told Frank everything. The phone call, the evidence, the lies, the whole sordid mess. He listened without interruption, occasionally shaking his head or muttering something under his breath that sounded like creative profanity. "So what are you going to do?" Frank asked when I finished. "I don't know. Part of me wants to confront her. Part of me wants to pretend I never found out. And part of me wants to drive over to Travis's lot and introduce his face to a tire iron." "Well, the tire iron option sounds satisfying, but it won't solve your problems. Might create some new ones, though, like an assault charge." Frank leaned back in his chair. "You got proof?" I showed him the screenshots on my phone. Frank whistled low. "Whew, she's not even trying to hide it. That's either stupid or cruel. Maybe both." "What about Sam? She know anything?" "I don't think so, but she's smart. She'll figure it out soon enough if this keeps up." Frank was quiet for a moment, then stood up. "Come on, let's hit the bags for a while. Clear your head. You're going to need to think straight for what comes next." I spent the next hour taking out my frustration on a heavy bag, with Frank calling out combinations and encouragement. "Jab, cross, hook. Put some anger behind it. That's it. Channel that rage." By the time I was done, my knuckles were raw, and my shirt was soaked with sweat, but my head was clearer than it had been in months. The physical exertion had burned away some of the emotional fog, leaving behind something harder and more focused. Feel better? The game was really played. The next few days passed in a strange kind of suspended animation. I went through the motions of normal life while gathering intelligence like some kind of suburban spy. Melissa continued her charade, and I continued pretending to believe it. We were both acting in a play neither of us wanted to be in. I started paying attention to details I'd previously ignored. The way she checked her phone constantly, how she'd suddenly developed opinions about things she'd never cared about before, like expensive wine and foreign films. The new underwear that definitely wasn't for my benefit. On Thursday, I followed her. I'd never done anything like it before, and I felt like a creep the entire time, but I needed to see it with my own eyes, needed to confirm what I already knew in my gut. I borrowed Frank's beat-up Honda and stayed 3 cars back as Melissa drove across town, past the gym she claimed to attend, straight to the Riverside Inn. Travis's silver BMW was already in the parking lot. I sat there for 20 minutes, watching the door to room 237, feeling something inside me break and reshape itself into something harder. When I finally drove away, I wasn't the same man who'd started following his wife that evening. That night, Melissa came home, glowing and energetic, full of stories about her amazing workout and how Jenny really pushed the class tonight. She even suggested we go out for dinner over the weekend, maybe try that new Italian place downtown. Sounds great, I said, and meant it. By the weekend, I'd be ready to have some very interesting conversations. Friday morning, I made 2 phone calls. The first was to my brother-in-law, Mike, who worked as a private investigator in the city. The second was to my old army buddy, Pete, who now ran a security company and owed me a favor from when I'd rebuilt his truck's engine for free. Mike could get me professional-grade photos and documentation. Pete could get me some specialized equipment that wasn't exactly legal for civilians to own, but wasn't exactly illegal either, if you knew the right loopholes. By Friday afternoon, I had a plan. Melissa announced she had another spin class that evening, this one running later than usual. Jenny's doing a special session for the advanced group, she explained, not quite meeting my eyes. That's capture clear images from a considerable distance. I felt ridiculous carrying it, like some kind of discount private eye. But desperate times called for desperate measures. I drove to the Riverside Inn and positioned myself across the street behind a billboard advertising personal injury lawyers. The irony wasn't lost on me. At 8:23 p.m., Melissa's Honda pulled into the parking lot. At 8:26 p.m., Travis's BMW followed. I started taking pictures. They met in the parking lot, like they'd done this 100 times before. Melissa practically ran to him, and he caught her in his arms, spinning her around like something out of a romantic movie. Then they kissed, long and passionate, right there in the open where anyone could see. I took pictures of it all. They went into room 237, the same room from the receipt I'd found. I waited in my car, feeling like the world's most pathetic stalker, until they came out 2 hours later. More kissing, more embracing, more evidence for my growing collection. But the most interesting part happened as they were saying goodbye. I couldn't hear what they were talking about, but I could read body language well enough. Travis seemed to be pushing for something, and Melissa was shaking her head. He grabbed her arm, not gently, and said something that made her pull away. For just a moment she looked scared. Then the moment passed, and they were back to their romantic farewell. But I'd seen enough to know that whatever fantasy Melissa thought she was living, the reality was probably more complicated. I drove home and waited. Melissa came in at 11:15 p.m., humming some song under her breath, looking satisfied and relaxed. She kissed my cheek and asked about my evening. "Quiet night," I said. "Just worked on the truck and watched some TV." "That's nice, honey. I'm exhausted. Jenny really put us through our paces tonight." She went upstairs to shower, and I sat in my kitchen, looking at the photos on my camera's display screen. Clear, undeniable evidence of my wife's betrayal. In the old days, this would have been enough to end everything. Divorce papers, lawyers, division of assets, custody arrangements. But I wasn't interested in the old days anymore. I was interested in justice. The next morning was Saturday, and Melissa suggested we go out for breakfast, just the two of us. Sam sleeping over at routine and work stress. But I want to make more time for us. She was looking at me with those green eyes, the same eyes that had made me fall in love with her all those years ago. For a moment, I almost believed her. Almost thought that maybe the whole thing with Travis was just a phase, a mistake she was ready to put behind her. Then I remembered the photos on my camera, the lies, the casual way she'd called me clueless in her emails. "That sounds wonderful," I said. "We should definitely do that." We finished breakfast and walked around downtown Millfield, holding hands like teenagers. Melissa pointed out things she wanted to buy, places she wanted to visit, plans she wanted to make. It was like she was trying to rebuild our relationship on top of the wreckage of her betrayal, without ever acknowledging what she'd destroyed. That afternoon, while Melissa was running errands, I made another visit to Frank's gym. This time, I wasn't looking for therapy. I was looking for training. "I want to learn how to really fight," I told Frank. He looked at me carefully. "This about your wife's situation?" "Maybe. Probably. I just want to be ready for whatever comes next." Frank nodded slowly. "All right, but we do this right. No street fighting, no bar brawl nonsense. You want to learn to fight? You learn discipline first, control, strategy." That's exactly what I want. We spent the next 2 hours working on fundamentals, footwork, balance, basic combinations. Frank was a tough teacher, correcting my form, pushing me harder than I'd been pushed in years. "Fighting's not about anger," he told me as I worked the heavy bag. "Anger makes you sloppy. Fighting's about focus, about being smarter and tougher than the other guy." Smarter and tougher. I could work with that. By the time I got home, Melissa was back from her errands, cooking dinner and humming that same song from the night before. She'd bought groceries, including ingredients for my favorite meal, pot roast with all the fixings. "What's the occasion?" I asked. "No occasion, just felt like doing something nice for my husband." We had dinner together, talking and laughing like we hadn't done in months. Melissa told stories about her coworkers, asked about my projects at the garage, managed to catch a glimpse of her phone screen on the way back. The message was from Travis. "Can't wait to see you Monday. Same time? Same place?" Monday. She hadn't mentioned any Monday spin class to me. I sat back down next to my wife, put my arm around her shoulders, and watched the rest of the movie. On screen, the romantic leads were working through their misunderstandings and finding their way back to each other. In real life, I was planning my revenge. Monday came faster than I expected. Melissa announced over breakfast that Jenny had scheduled a special advanced techniques class for that evening, and she might be home late. "That's fine," I said. "I'll probably work late at the garage anyway. Got a transmission rebuild that's been giving me trouble." The lie came easily. I was getting good at this. After Melissa left for work, I spent the morning putting the final pieces of my plan together. I'd been watching, learning, gathering evidence for over a week now. Tonight, everything would come to a head. But first, I had an unexpected visitor. Around noon, a silver BMW pulled into my driveway. Travis Kellerman stepped out, wearing another expensive suit and that fake smile I'd grown to hate. He walked into my garage like he owned the place. "You must be Danny," he said, extending his hand. "Travis Kellerman, from the auto dealership. I think we've met at a few community events." I wiped my greasy hands on a rag, but didn't shake his. "Yeah, I remember. What can I do for you?" "Well, I was hoping you might be able to help me out. I've got a customer with a classic Mustang, needs some restoration work. Your name keeps coming up as the best mechanic in town." The audacity was breathtaking. The man who was sleeping with my wife was standing in my garage asking me to work on his cars, probably so he could afford to take her to nicer hotels. "Sorry," I said, Booked solid for the next few months. That's a shame. I was prepared to pay premium rates, cash up front. He pulled out a roll of bills thick enough to choke a horse. This customer's very important to me. I'm sure she is. The nerve to suggest I should keep quiet about what I knew. That changed everything. I called Frank. I need to move up our timeline. What happened? I told him about Travis's visit, the barely veiled threats, the roll of cash. Frank listened in silence, then let out a string of profanity that would have made a sailor blush. That arrogant piece of garbage came to your house? Your house? Looks like it. All right, tonight then. You ready for this? I'm ready. The rest of the day crawled by like a wounded animal. I couldn't concentrate on work, couldn't eat lunch, couldn't do anything but think about what was coming. By evening, I was wound tighter than a spring. Melissa came home around 6, full of energy and excitement about her class that night. She'd bought new workout clothes, expensive ones that probably cost more than my monthly grocery budget. You look nice, I said. Thanks. Jenny says presentation matters even in fitness. If you look good, you feel good. And if you feel good, you perform better. Jenny sounds like a smart woman. She is. You'd like her. Melissa left at 7:30, kissing me goodbye and promising to be careful driving home late. I watched her taillights disappear down our street, then got in my truck and followed the route I'd memorized. But tonight was different. Tonight, I wasn't going to hide behind billboards and take pictures from a distance. Due tonight, I was going to confront them. I parked directly across from room 237 at the Riverside Inn and waited. Both cars were already there, which meant they were inside, doing what cheating spouses do in cheap motel rooms. I checked my watch, 8:15 p.m. At 8:45, I walked across the parking lot and knocked on the door. The silence that followed was almost comical. I could practically hear them scrambling around inside, probably trying to figure out who could possibly be interrupting their romantic evening. Housekeeping, I called out in the worst fake accent I could manage. We don't need anything, Travis's voice came through the door, slightly out of breath. Maintenance, then. Got a report of a water leak in this room. More silence, then whispered conversation I couldn't quite make out. Looked like she'd seen a ghost, which in a way she had. The ghost of her marriage. Danny, she started, but I held up a hand. Don't. Just don't. I know everything, Melissa. The phone calls, the emails, the receipts, all of it. I've been watching you for over a week. Travis had put on his shirt and was trying to regain some of his composure. Look, Danny, this doesn't have to get ugly. We're all adults here. Adults? I laughed, but there was no humor in it. Adults don't sneak around behind their spouse's back. Adults don't lie about spin classes and make up fictional instructors. Adults don't come to other men's homes and make threats. I never threatened you. No? Then what was that visit to my garage about? The cash, the warnings about accusations I couldn't prove, the suggestions that my nice life might get messed up? Melissa looked back and forth between us. What visit? Travis, what is he talking about? So she didn't know about his little intimidation attempt. Interesting. It's nothing, Travis said quickly. Just a misunderstanding. A misunderstanding? I pulled out my phone and showed them the photos I'd taken. Clear, undeniable images of them together. Kissing, embracing, walking into this very room. Like this misunderstanding? Melissa started crying. Not the dignified tears of a woman caught in a difficult situation, but the ugly, desperate sobs of someone whose world was collapsing. Danny, please, let me explain. Explain what? How you've been lying to me for months? How you've been making a fool of me in front of the whole town? How you've been risking our daughter's stability for this? I gestured at Travis, who was looking increasingly uncomfortable. It's not like that, she said. It just happened. I didn't plan for this. You didn't plan to fall in love with him, or you didn't plan to get caught. She didn't answer, which was answer enough. Travis stepped forward, trying to take control of the situation. Look, Danny, I understand you're upset, but Melissa and we have something real, something special. Maybe it's time to accept that and figure out how to handle this like civilized people. Fell silent, except for Melissa's sniffling. Travis was looking at the door like he was calculating whether he could make it out before I stopped him. Melissa was staring at her hands, unable to meet my eyes. Here's what's going to happen, I said finally. I'm going to leave now. Melissa, you're going to come home, and we're going to have a very long conversation about the future. Travis, you're going to stay away from my wife and my family, or I'm going to make your life very complicated. You can't tell me what to do, Travis said, but there was no conviction in his voice. Watch me. I turned to leave, then stopped at the door. Oh, and Travis? That customer with the classic Mustang? Tell them to find another mechanic. I don't work for people who threaten my family. I walked out of that motel room feeling like I'd won something, but I wasn't sure what. The confrontation had gone better than I'd expected, but I knew it was far from over. The real fight was just beginning. The drive home was the longest 20 minutes of my life. I kept checking my rearview mirror, expecting to see Melissa's Honda following me, but the road stayed empty. She was probably still at the motel, trying to figure out what to do next. I sat in my kitchen, drinking a beer and waiting. The house felt different now, like a crime scene after the police tape has been removed. Everything looked the same, but nothing would ever be the same again. At 11:30 p.m., I heard her car in the driveway. The front door opened and closed with unusual care, like she was trying not to wake someone. Her footsteps on the stairs were hesitant, uncertain. She found me in the kitchen, sitting at the table where we'd shared thousands of meals over the years. We need to talk, I said. She nodded and sat down across from me. Her makeup was smeared, her hair disheveled, and she looked older than I'd ever seen her. The woman who'd left the house 4 hours ago, full of excitement and energy, was gone, replaced by someone I barely recognized. How long? I asked. Danny. How long, Melissa? 4 months. Her voice was barely a whisper. 4 months. Not the 3 I'd suspected, but longer. Head in her hands. I was lonely, okay? I felt invisible in my own marriage. Travis made me feel alive again. And the lies? The elaborate stories about spin classes and Jenny the instructor? Was that Travis's idea? Mine, she admitted. I know how it sounds, but I didn't want to hurt you. You didn't want to hurt me, so you decided to lie to me for 4 months instead. I was going to tell you, eventually. When? After you'd moved in with him? After you'd cleaned out our bank account? After Sam graduated and you didn't need me for child support anymore? She flinched like I'd slapped her. It's not like that. Then what is it like, Melissa? Help me understand. Because from where I'm sitting, it looks like you decided you wanted a different life, and instead of being honest about it, you chose to sneak around behind my back and make me feel crazy for suspecting something was wrong. We talked until 3 a.m, or rather, I talked and she cried, and occasionally offered explanations that explained nothing. She was sorry. She never meant for it to happen. She still loved me, just not the same way. Travis understood her in ways I never had. It was all the standard cheater's playbook, every cliché and rationalization I'd read about online during my week of research. The only thing missing was her claiming we'd grown apart, but she managed to work that in around 2:30 a.m. What do you want to do? I asked finally. I don't know. I need time to think. Time to think about what? Whether you want to be married to me or not? Because from where I'm sitting, you already made that choice 4 months ago. It's complicated, Danny. No, it's not. It's actually very simple. You either want to be my wife or you don't. You either want to work on our marriage or you want to be with Travis, but you don't get to have both. She looked at me with those green eyes, and for a moment I saw the woman I'd fallen in love with 17 years ago. What if I choose you? Then Travis disappears from your life completely. No contact, no friendship, no nothing. You quit the gym, you find a new place to work out, and you never see him again. And if I choose him? And routine had replaced intimacy and connection. Maybe Melissa was right about some things. Maybe I had been neglecting her, taking her for granted. But that didn't excuse what she'd done. Problems in a marriage were supposed to be solved by the people in the marriage, not by bringing in outside parties and elaborate deception. The next few days were surreal. Melissa and I moved around each other like polite strangers. She slept in the guest room, ate meals at different times, and left the house without explanation. I assumed she was seeing Travis, but I didn't ask, and she didn't volunteer the information. Sam came home from her friend's house on Wednesday and immediately sensed something was wrong. She was too smart to fool, and too old to protect with lies. "Are you and Mom getting divorced?" she asked me directly. "I don't know, sweetheart. We're going through some problems right now." "Is she having an affair?" The question hit me like a punch to the gut. "What makes you ask that?" "I'm not stupid, Dad. She's been acting weird for months. Always on her phone, always going out, always making excuses. Plus, Jessica's mom saw her at some restaurant with a guy who wasn't you." Small towns. Nothing stayed secret for long. "Your mother and I are trying to work things out," I said. "But whatever happens, you need to know that we both love you, and none of this is your fault." Sam nodded, but I could see the hurt and confusion in her eyes. She was 16, old enough to understand that her parents' marriage was falling apart, but still young enough to hope it could be fixed. Thursday night, Melissa didn't come home at all. She sent a text around midnight. "Staying at Jenna's tonight. Need space to think." Jenna Morrison was Melissa's best friend and co-worker, a divorced woman who'd never liked me much. I'd always suspected she encouraged Melissa's complaints about our marriage, and now I wondered if she'd been encouraging more than just complaints. Friday morning came, and Melissa still wasn't home. I called her phone, but it went straight to voicemail, telling him I was clueless. "Yesterday you were saying he understood you in ways I never could." I was confused. "I made a mistake, Danny. A terrible mistake. But I want to fix it." I wanted to believe her. God, how I wanted to believe her. But trust, once broken, doesn't heal just because someone says they're sorry. "If we're going to try this," I said, "there have to be rules. Complete transparency. I get access to your phone, your email, everything. You quit the gym and find somewhere else to work out. You end all contact with Travis, and I mean all contact. And we go to counseling." She nodded eagerly. "Yes, whatever you want. I'll do anything. And if I find out you're lying to me again, even about something small, it's over. No second chances, no explanations, no trying to work it out. Over." "I understand." We shook hands like business partners closing a deal, which, in a way, I suppose we were. For the next 2 weeks, Melissa was the perfect wife. She came home straight from work, cooked elaborate dinners, suggested activities we could do together. She gave me her phone password and left her email open on the laptop. She scheduled counseling appointments and talked about how much she was looking forward to rebuilding our relationship. It might have worked if I hadn't seen Travis's BMW parked outside her office building on a Tuesday afternoon when I was driving by on my way to pick up parts. I parked across the street and waited. 20 minutes later, Melissa came out of the building and got into Travis's car. They drove away together, and I followed at a distance. They went to a coffee shop on the other side of town, sat in a corner booth, and had what looked like an intense conversation. I couldn't hear what they were saying, but their body language told the story. Travis was animated, gesturing with his hands. Melissa was shaking her head, looking distressed. Then he reached across the table and took her hand, and she didn't pull away. I drove home and waited for her to come back with whatever lies she'd prepared. She walked in at her usual time, kissed my cheek, and asked about my day. "How was work?" I asked. "Busy. Lots of insurance claims to process," to keep their mouths shut. Frank was quiet for a moment. "This about your wife?" "This is about justice." "All right then. Come by the gym tomorrow night. We'll talk." I hung up the phone and looked around my garage at all the tools I'd collected over the years. Tools for fixing things, for building things, for taking things apart when they were beyond repair. Some things couldn't be fixed, but they could be dismantled with precision and care, piece by piece, until nothing remained but the memory of what they used to be. Melissa had made her choice. Now it was time for her to live with the consequences. And it was time for Travis Kellerman to learn that some husbands weren't as clueless as they appeared. The game was about to change, and I was finally ready to play by my own rules.